The Gale of the Red Mist is a dangerous place, and weapons are key to an anime vampire's survival, as the old saying goes. Welcome to a comprehensive weapon guide for Code Vein. I'll be splitting this up into multiple parts based on weapon class. It will include where to find these weapons, my opinions on their general usefulness, and the damage they deal for a character at level 1, level 50, level 100, level 200, and the max level of 300. In this video, we will cover Halberds. For the sake of accurate comparison, I'll be using the Queenslayer blood code with the Willpower Up, Strength plus Willpower Up, Mind plus Willpower Up, and the Mind Up passives. This will give us an A rating in every stat that is relevant to weapons, and thus allow us to wield every single weapon in the game with the same build. I would not recommend using this build for exploring, since you can only equip 2 weapons at a time, and it misses out on a few really useful passives and active buffs. It's better to have a setup that leans into your chosen weapon's strengths and your own personal playstyle. I'll be throwing around some terms as I describe the weapons and their moves, so let's make sure there isn't any confusion. The weak attack is just that, a quicker, low damage, low stamina cost attack. The weak attack chain is simply the series of attacks that happen when you repeatedly press the weak attack button. Sometimes it's just 2 swings, sometimes it's 3 swings, and sometimes it's 4 swings. Then the animations loop around back to the first swing. The sprinting attack is a weak attack you use while sprinting. Shocking, I know. I usually won't go out of my way to say anything about the sprinting attacks unless it's something special. Same for the rolling attacks. The animation changes depending on whether you dodge forwards, backwards, or to the sides, but they don't really fit into the weak attack chain, or they just act as a substitute for the first swing. A combo weak attack is a unique move each weapon has that you can do by holding the dash button and pressing weak attack while not moving your character. It's usually a lunging attack that covers a lot of ground, an attack that knocks enemies down, a wide sweeping attack, or a combination of these. The uncharged heavy attack is what you get when you tap the heavy attack button. The fully charged heavy is when you hold the heavy attack button for a few seconds. There is no partial charge mechanic in Code Vein. If you let go of the heavy attack button too soon, you will just perform an uncharged heavy attack. Feel free to practice the different moves to your heart's content on the training dummy back at home base. Speaking of the training dummy at home base, I'll be performing all of the damage tests on it. This is worth mentioning because the dummy has neither any elemental resistances nor elemental weaknesses. Some weapons have innate elemental damage and will be more effective against some enemies and weaker against others. I'll mention this again when we get to the individual weapons with built-in elemental damage. Lastly, all of the weapons were tested without any transformations, since this can change the damage dramatically based on your level, what passives you have equipped, and what you're fighting. You can think of the damage numbers I provide as a rough estimate for a generic character, rather than the highest possible damage you can achieve with the right preparations. Okay, now that the preliminary stuff has been cleared up, let's jump right in. Halfway between the one-handed swords and the great swords sit the halberds. These are a solid and plentiful weapon class with decent stagger and damage. The long reach is a nice bonus too. The weight of each halberd varies wildly, with some weighing close to a heavy one-handed sword and others being on par with a lightweight greatsword. The movesets are also incredibly varied as well. Some attacks are quick, some are slow, and some just suck. One interesting tidbit is that there are no halberds that deal crush damage, only slash and pierce. Normally this isn't a huge deal unless you are trying to maximize damage as much as possible. Another weird characteristic of halberds is the fact that the combo weak attack usually does more damage than the uncharged heavy, while also frequently knocking enemies down. Lastly, the halberd's backstep dodge attack has a weird property where it has a very long recovery unless you input another attack or move your character. It's a minor thing, but noteworthy all the same. Halberds can be divided into 3 main groups based on the nature of the weak attacks: normal, spear type, and double spin. I'll be sure to go over each type when we cover the individual weapons. Starting now! The Queenslayer Halberd. The Queenslayer Halberd is our first normal halberd. It has a medium swing speed and no serious weirdness going on with it. That's not sarcasm, it's just very, very standard. A good introduction to halberds as a class. You'll find this halberd in a chest in the player memories after the second checkpoint. It's a little bit of a hassle to get there, so let's speed things up. You'll know it's the right chest because it's guarded by a bat girl with a map marker glued to her. However, the room containing the chest she's guarding is behind a locked door. You'll need to collect the storage room key and then loop around again. Basically, you just follow the route being shown now. The weak attack chain is a backhanded spin going from left to right, a swipe going from right to left, and finally an overhead slam. The combo weak attack is a thrust that topples enemies. The uncharged heavy is a delayed overhead chop, while the fully charged heavy is a spin slash that goes from right to left and also knocks enemies down. Are we done here? Still need me to stall longer? Derp, who said you could be director? Be careful, since this move has a dead zone right next to your character where the attack will miss. However, it is pretty rare to pull off, so don't be scared to use this weapon just because of that. This is a nice and tidy halberd with no truly odd properties, but with no specific strengths either. I take that back. This is the only halberd that does not suffer from the backstep dodge attack weirdness I previously mentioned. It's good all around, but otherwise unremarkable. Don't be fooled, when it comes to halberds, being bland is better than being bad, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The Bardiche. The Bardiche Halberd is one of the first you find in your journey if you are supremely unlucky with enemy drops. It's found in a chest in the ruined city center shortly after the parking garage checkpoint. Be warned, since approaching the chest activates a blood trial, or multiple ways of loss that will chase you. If you find yourself overwhelmed, run towards the entrance of the Howling Pit to despawn them. The weak attack chain is 3 horizontal swings that alternate directions. The combo weak attack is an overhead slam that knocks enemies down. The uncharged heavy is a slow horizontal chop, while the fully charged heavy is a double slash that deals respectable damage, but leaves you wide open. The standard Bardiche is very pedestrian, similar to the Queenslayer Halberd. There's nothing very wrong with it, but there isn't anything spectacular about it either, unless you count the blocking capabilities. If you stack a guard booster with steady bulwark, you can reach 100% block with this bad boy. The Impaler! Moving on to one of my favorite halberds, and also the first of the 2 spears in the game, we have the Impaler. You can find it in a chest, but just behind the final checkpoint of the Howling Pit, guarded by some freaky-looking sea urchins. While the damage is somewhat lacking, your attack speed and good stagger will more than compensate for this weakness. As a spear, it has quick, long-range pokes that build up stagger just like the other halberds. This also means it lacks sweeping attacks, besides a couple of the rolling attacks. This actually isn't a big deal, because the ease with which you can knock enemies down more than makes up for a linear moveset. Speaking of moves, let's go over them now. The weak attack chain is 2 fast pokes followed by an overhead slam. The combo weak attack is a lunging thrust that sends foes flying. The uncharged heavy is another lunging thrust that can't knock enemies down, but reaches a bit farther than the combo weak attack. The fully charged heavy is a short-range thrust that deals a big chunk of damage. The Impaler is also quite lightweight for a halberd, allowing you a bit more freedom with blood veils and blood codes with more mobility. The quick attack speed also makes it good for debuff transformations. I highly recommend using either of the 2 spears for tackling the Tower of Trials 2 and 3 because of its quick moveset and good stagger. All in all, a superb weapon. The Garnet Splitter. Oh boy, what a terrible weapon. Garnet Splitter is our first double spin halberd. It also has innate blood damage, meaning your damage will be garbage against the majority of the enemies in the game. Seriously, the Garnet Splitter is one of the worst weapons in the game. Let's go over the moves so I can show you what I mean. The weak attack chain starts with a double spin slash that can't be cancelled once started, followed by 2 alternating slashes. Be careful not to press the weak attack button too soon after the first input, because you'll just sit there like an idiot. Yes, the double spin attack is just that terrible. Sprinting attacks, combo weak attacks, rolling attacks, and heavy attacks are much better starting options compared to the double spin attack. Avoid that double spin like the plague if you want to maximize your effectiveness with this weapon. Anyways, on to the other moves. The combo weak attack is a backstep slash with deceptively short range. You need to be right on top of your target or you will whiff. At least it can knock enemies down. The uncharged heavy is a diagonal slash that shoots out a single projectile, while the fully charged heavy is a double slash that emits 3 projectiles. So the moveset is annoying to use, which is bad, but not exactly enough to ruin the weapon. No, the built-in blood damage seals the undesirable deal. Split physical and elemental damage means that your weapon will need to cut through both physical and elemental defenses of your opponent, reducing your overall damage unless the enemy is weak to that element. Blood is the most commonly resisted element. This means that unless you're fighting little baby mobs or guys made of fire, your damage is going to suffer immensely. That fully charged heavy, however, is among the most damaging halberd attacks, as you can see from the chart. That isn't enough to salvage this weapon, though. Nothing will salvage this abomination. This weapon sucks, and I'm done looking at it. Let's continue. The Dammerung. Here we have our first and only NPC halberd, Io's custom halberd. You can acquire this weapon by trading valuables with Io and purchase the Dammerung for 50 friendship points. It is basically an improved Garnet Splitter. This means it's a double spin halberd, which sucks, but the fully charged heavy has a trick up its sleeve. The weak attack chain is a dumb double spin attack followed by a thrust and a horizontal sweep. The combo weak attack is a very short-range backstep slash that knocks enemies down. The uncharged heavy is a diagonal slash with a single projectile, while the fully charged heavy is a double spin slash that causes an explosion and costs a whopping 5 ichor. The reason that attack is so expensive is because it also gives you a buff that reduces all incoming damage. This defense buff persists after you change weapons, so you don't even have to use the Dammerung to take advantage of its special ability. A double spin halberd that gives you benefits when you're not using it? God tier double spin halberd. The Black Halberd. Next up is a powerful weapon that blends spears and normal halberds. You can acquire the Black Halberd from the hunters in black wielding it, the first of which can be found in the City of Falling Flame. The drop rate is pretty low, so just keep killing him over and over until you get it. The weak attack chain is a thrust followed by a horizontal chop and finishing with an overhead slam. The combo weak attack is a thrust that topples enemies. The uncharged heavy is a slow overhead chop, while the fully charged heavy is a spinning double slash that deals quite a bit of damage. This is one of the best halberds in Code Vein. It has good damage, a quick combo weak attack that floors enemies, and wide sweeping attacks. You should definitely give this one a shot. The Assassin's Sickle. Now onto a very weird halberd. You are awarded the Assassin's Sickle upon defeat of Slimy Stripper. It is one of 2 weapons in the base game with built-in ice damage. This isn't great, but at least ice is better than blood. However, the weapon is a double spin halberd, souring it immediately. However, Assassin's Sickle is similar to the Dammerung because it has a trick up its sleeve too. See, I told you this was a weird one. The weak attack chain starts with a bad double spin attack followed by a thrust and a diagonal slash. The combo weak attack is a flaccid backstep slash that has a stupid short range, but will knock enemies down. The uncharged heavy is an upward slash that kicks up a splash of water, while the fully charged heavy is a meme-tastic super slide. That fully charged heavy makes you crouch low and zip forward rapidly. Many people confuse this combination of properties as the fully charged heavy having invincibility frames. After playing through the whole game using only the fully charged heavy, I can assure you that no, it doesn't actually have iframes, but yes, it is ridiculously effective. This thing is so bizarre. I hate it because it's a double spin halberd, but I love its crazy slide. I'm so conflicted about this weapon. Ah! The Sunset Halberd. Let's bring things down a notch with another annoying double spin halberd. The Sunset Halberd drops from halberd-wielding Lost with tattered scarves and is a pretty common drop at that. You'll more than likely end up with a few of these by the end of the game. The first attack of the weak attack chain is an awful double spin attack, followed by a right to left swipe, and finally an overhead chop. The combo weak attack is an overhead slam that knocks enemies down. The uncharged heavy is another overhead slam, but it doesn't knock enemies down. But the fully charged heavy is a bit interesting. It's a spin slash that can knock enemies down if that's the attack that staggers them. The Sunset Halberd is basically a Garnet Splitter with pure physical damage and more reliable attacks. Depending on what you're fighting, this could either be a good thing or an inconsequential thing. The Lost Bardiche. Time for another common halberd, and one that has pretty good moveset as well. The damage is a bit low, but otherwise this weapon is sublime. The requirements are virtually non-existent too, meaning you can use all your passive slots for utility or damage. The Lost Bardiche drops from the small Lost-wielding polearms, the earliest of which can be found in the Ruined City Underground tutorial area. The weak attack chain is a series of alternating swipes. The combo weak attack is a powerful thrust that topples opponents. The uncharged heavy is a delayed swipe from left to right, while the fully charged heavy is a double slash with a long recovery after firing off. The combo weak attack poke is the strongest move the Lost Bardiche has, since it's capable of knocking down enemies with ease. Early to acquire, a good knockdown move, sweeping weak attacks, low requirements, and reasonable weight, the Lost Bardiche has everything you could want from a halberd. Except damage. It has to have some kind of weakness, since you can get it in the first area of the game after all. The Obliterator Axe. Next up is the heaviest halberd of the bunch, and the one with the highest damage per swing. The Obliterator Axe is a beast of a weapon, capable of easily one-shotting bosses or hitting 60,000 damage for the DLC Horror Hunting Trials if you use the right setup. You get the Obliterator Axe by defeating the Argent Berserker in the Cathedral of Sacred Blood. That means you are guaranteed to get this powerhouse of a weapon relatively early on. Well, early from the perspective that you get it before you have to fight any successors. The weak attack chain is alternating horizontal swipes. The combo weak attack is an overhead slam that knocks enemies down. The uncharged heavy is an overhead slam that doesn't knock enemies down, while the fully charged heavy is a spin slash with a dead zone directly next to your character. It might look similar to the other spin slashes, but you can't knock enemies down with it. Despite this, the weapon is so powerful. The wide swing arcs and high damage more than justify the hefty weight. This is the weapon I reach for when I need something dead quickly. Slap Revenant's Ambition on a blood code with a good weight limit, and you're golden. The Argent Wolf Poleaxe. Rounding out the last of the vanilla weapons is the Double Spin Halberd with the highest damage. The Argent Wolf Poleaxe is somewhat rare since it only drops from white Cerberus Knights wielding it, the first of which can be found in the Ice Tunnel by the final missile of the Ridge of Frozen Souls. The weak attack chain starts with a sucky double spin attack, followed by a right to left swipe, and finally an overhead chop. The combo weak attack is an overhead slam that knocks enemies down. The uncharged heavy is a delayed overhead chop, while the fully charged heavy is a spinning double slash that can also knock enemies down. As previously stated, the damage is actually pretty good. You could feasibly use the Argent with Poleaxe on the Halberd one-shot build if you don't feel like using the Obliterator Axe. I just wish this weapon wasn't a double spin halberd. Make sure to start combat encounters with any move that isn't the standing weak attack, and you'll be fine. The Lightning Brionac. Our first DLC Halberd is actually more oriented for pure casters rather than melee. This is because the Lightning Brionac has the highest drain rating of any weapon in the game, and the rating goes even higher with the Devour transformation. In addition to the high drain rating, the Lightning Brionac is the lightest weight halberd by some 33%. The Brionac only weighs 30 units, while the next lightest halberd, the Cerulean Spear, is 45. To obtain the halberd, you need to defeat the Lord of Thunder with 3 revives or fewer while wielding any halberd. The moveset is exactly the same as the Lost Bardiche, except the fully charged heavy unleashes a lightning buff that sticks around if you switch weapons. As you can see from the chart, the melee damage is pitiful, even after the lightning buff is applied. That still doesn't stop it from being an excellent choice for casters, because the moveset is good, the weight is relatively low, and the drain rating is absolutely bonkers. The Lightning Brionac is well worth the effort to acquire it. Just adjust your expectations accordingly. The Blood Mist Halberd. It's time for the only double spin DLC Halberd. It also has a fancy ice buff built into the heavy attack. That's nice, since ice is one of the most useful elemental damage types, but the double spin moveset requires a bit of finesse to prevent you getting smacked in the face. You can acquire the Blood Mist Halberd by defeating the Frozen Empress with 3 revives or fewer while wielding any halberd. The weak attack chain starts with a bad double spin attack, followed by a right to left swipe and an overhead chop. The combo weak attack is an overhead slam that topples foes. The uncharged heavy is a delayed overhead chop, while the fully charged heavy is a double spin slash that buffs your weapon with ice and knocks enemies down. All in all, I kinda don't like this halberd. While it does have a lot of good things about it, the double spin moveset cancels out all the good, leaving me feeling tepid. Lukewarm. Just room temperature. Okay, I'm done. No, wait! This ice halberd is only sort of cool! The Cerulean Spear. Rounding out our list is the God Eater Collab Spear, and the last of the only 2 spear-type halberds. Where the Impaler was focused more on dexterity, the Cerulean Spear focuses on strength. Since this is part of the pre-order bonus DLC, you'll have to spend IRL money to add it to your game. As soon as you reach home base for the first time, you can purchase this weapon for a tiny amount of haze. And you very well should, because the spears are quite good. The weak attack chain is 2 quick pokes followed by an overhead slam. The combo weak attack is a lunging thrust that knocks enemies down. The uncharged heavy is a long reaching thrust, while the fully charged heavy is a powerful thrust that has a projectile component. It might look like 3 attacks, but it only ticks once. The Cerulean Spear is quick, it staggers like crazy, and you can get it really early in the game. What's not to love? And that's got it, all the halberds in Code Vein. Special thanks to the Big O, Blade of Kyrie, and my friends on Discord for offering advice and helping me proofread this guide. And a very special thanks to you for watching this to the end. I greatly appreciate it. Until next time!